Okay, now we're going to look at user forms. And user forms are a great way to interact with your user and take data from your user, and then you can do stuff with that data. So we're going to look at user forms and build a bunch of controls on the form. Let me just remove this user form 2, and it says, do you want to export it? I'm going to click no. So now um, we have this user form 1 in our project, and that user form 1 is something we inserted a long time ago when we were getting used to the editor. So let's learn how to let's relearn if we forgot how to insert a user form. You go to insert and you go to user form, and now I get another user form here, user form 2. And this is a user form, and you could actually just run this. If you press the run button now, oops, when you press the run button, it shows you the user form, and you can see it says user form 2 here, but it's blank. So what we're going to be doing is adding what's called controls to this user form so that we could take data from the user, and then we're going to take that data and put it on the worksheet. But in reality, you could take this data that the user provides and you could do anything you want with it. You could run a macro based on the input, etc. So first thing we want to do is pull up the properties window in our editor, because we're going to change some properties of the form. The first thing I want to change is the name. I don't want it to be user form 1. I want it to be frm underscore enter data. And notice there's another field here called caption, and that's what this is. This is the caption. I'm going to change that from user form 1 to please enter data. And you can see that changed up here to please enter data. And then let's change the back color to something else. Let's change it to green, just to show you a bunch of different properties here. And then you can even change the size of the form by simply going up here and dragging the form, making it bigger. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. You can change a bunch of these properties, and I'm not going to go through every one. That would take too long. It would be tedious. But you could look through them, and you can Google them if you're interested, and you'll find some information about how to use them and what they do. But we're going to cover a lot of the ones that are most commonly used. So now let's run our form. If I just put my cursor, here on the form and press play, now look at my form. Well, I changed the size so it's bigger. I changed the background color so it's green, and now I changed the caption so it says please enter data. And what I want to do is put a button on the worksheet so that I can pop up that form. So to do that, on this worksheet user form, I'm going to go to the developer tab, and I'm going to go to this insert here, and you see this ActiveX control. There's a command button here, and if I click that, it allows me to drag a button here. So this is going to be my button that I'm going to use to open up that form. And if I go to properties here, then I'm looking at properties of this command button. And let me just change the name of this command button to btn underscore enter data. And I'll change the back color of this button to, let's say, green as well. I'll change the font to something a little bit bigger because it's usually a bit smaller. I'll make it bold, and I'll make it 18 in terms of the size. I'll click OK, and I'll change the caption to enter data. So now if I close this, look at my button now. It says enter data. It's green, and now I want to somehow link the button to the form. So to do that, all I need to do is double click the button, and if I do that, it takes me to a sub procedure automatically that says btn underscore enter data underscore click. So this is a sub procedure that is going to be run when the button is clicked. And all I had to do again was double click on the button and it created this code for me. So VBA is pretty useful like that. Notice, where is this sub procedure at? It's on the user form sheet. So now we're writing this code here in the sheet module for sheet 10, which has a name of user form. So now I want to open up the user form. I want to show the user form when I click the button. To do that, all you have to do is frm underscore enter data dot show, and this dot show is going to show the user form. Notice my form is frm enter data. All I'm doing is doing this dot show. So now if I go to my worksheet and if I exit this design mode, so this design mode allowed me to put the button on the worksheet. I want to click out of that so it's not highlighted anymore. And now if I click this button, I get a form, but it's still blank, but that's okay. But now we're getting somewhere because I can click a button and a form appears. Pretty cool. So now what do we want to do? Well, now we want to put some things on our form. We want to put some things on our form so that we can take data from the user. And to do that, go to your form here and go to the toolbox here. And notice the toolbox has a controls tab and all kinds of controls on it. And we're going to go through these. And it also has, if you right click on the controls tab, it has additional controls. And if you click that additional controls, you'll see other controls here that are a part of, other other packages. Most of the controls come from a Microsoft package, or actually a library. Remember, like all these things down here, it's telling you like this Yahoo helper toolbar, it's located in a .dll file on your computer somewhere. But I just wanted to show you that there's more controls than what you see. You're not going to probably use these additional controls, but just be aware that there are other controls besides what you see, and we got there by doing additional controls. We're going to focus on the controls that normally pop up because those are the ones you use 99.9% of the time. And so let's do that. This first control here, this arrow, just allows me to, it says select objects, but what that really means is you have to put an object on the form. So let me put this next control, this label control, on the form, and if I do that, I can drag a label, and notice when I did that, this select control, this select object is sort of, it's pressed in, right? You could see this is the one that's activated. That's because as soon as you drag something to the form, it's selected. And that's all this icon does. It just basically tells you like when you're selecting something. But look what we did. We put a label on the form, and the label has a default text of label 1. What we want to do is change the properties of this label by going to the properties tab. So if we go up here, we could change the name of this label, which what we're going to do, because I want to take the user's name. So I'm going to name this label LBL underscore name, and I want to change the caption to, instead of saying label 1 up here, I want it to say name. And you could change the back color. I can make the color, orange like this. You could change the font, all these things, right? All these properties that we've seeing we can mess around with. There's all kinds of stuff, text alignment, word wrap, etc., etc. But we just put a label on the form. And let me change that color back because I don't like that color. I'm going to change it to green. And now I need some control here to accept a name. And that would be this control, a text box. So if you go to this AB sort of icon and you click it, you can do the same thing. You can put a text box right next to the label. And there's our text box. And I'm going to name this text box. Notice as soon as I dragged it onto the form in the properties window, it's the control that is in the properties window. So if I put my cursor here, I'm in the label. I have the labels control in the properties window. If I put my cursor here, I have the text box control. So it's easy to maneuver between controls in the properties window by just selecting the control. I'm going to change the name of this text box to txt_name. And that's all I want to do right now. You could scroll through and you could look at the rest of those properties if you want. But now we have something that can accept a name. So if I run this, here I can write, my name, Bob or Joe or whoever. Right? So you can write a name, and it looks okay. But now we need a way to take the data that's in here and put it on the worksheet. So to do that, first let's go over to the worksheet and put a column here called name. And I want to put it on the worksheet, but I need to know what row to put it in. So I want to put the data I take from the user in the last available row. So to do that, I'll use a named range, and I'll name that range last row. And this last row named range is going to be offset. The formula for it is going to be offset user form A1, comma, count A, everything in column A, comma 0. And what this does is, if I click OK and I click this thing, notice what it does. It finds the last available cell in column A that doesn't have data in it. And it does that by counting all the cells in column A with data. So in this case, there's one cell with data. That would be this cell here. And it offsets range A1, that number. So it offsets this cell A1 one row. That's what this comma is. It says put in the number of rows. So I put in comma and then count A user form AA. So what I'm doing is offsetting A1 one row. And now let me just double check that. Now if I go to last row, oh, I changed something. Oops. So this parameter here is the number of rows you want to offset, and I'm telling it offset 1, and this is the number of columns I want to offset. Where am I offsetting from? I'm offsetting from range A1, and range A1 is here, so I'm going to offset 1 row. So there I go. Okay, so now I know where to drop the data, but still I can enter a name like Joe. But now I have no way to get this Joe onto the worksheet in that cell. So let's write some code to do that. What we're going to do is put a button on this form. So I go back to the toolbox, and there's this command button icon. I click that. I go down here, and I just added a button to the form, and now I can customize that. Let me change the name of this to BTN click, enter data click, and I'll change the caption to enter data on worksheets. I'll change the color to something to separate it from being gray. I don't want it to be gray. I'll change it to yellow, and I'll just make the font bold. So you see how easy it is to work with these properties. And now I have a button on my form that I want the user to press. But now I have to somehow take the data in the text box, and when this is clicked, I have to put it on the worksheet. So let's do that. To do that, I'm just going to double click on this button, and when I do, again, VBA creates some code for me. Really convenient. And the code is btn enter click data underscore click. So this is code that's going to run when that button is clicked. And what I can do now is something like range. I could do sheets. Let me just make sure I'm on the right sheets. Sheets user form dot select, and then I can do range last row dot select, and then what I could do is I could actually create a variable here, dim x row as long, and I'll do this as the row. So I want to get the last row that I want to put the data in, and I'll do last row, or x row, is equal to that named range we just saw, and then the row of that range. So now I could do something like this: cells x row comma 1 dot value is equal to, now watch this, frm underscore enter data dot txt name dot value. So now I can enter data on the worksheet. Or you can move data from the form to the worksheet. And let's run this and see what happens. So if I run this and I enter a name Bob and I hit the button, look what happened. Bob is now here. And if I run it again, look what happened. Bob is right below it. So each time I run this code, what's happening is, and let me just close this, each time I run this code, when I click this button, I just double click that and I'll go into the button click procedure. What's happening is I'm selecting the sheet user forms, and then I'm finding a row here, and I'm assigning the row of this last row named range and putting it in the x row variable, and then I'm using that x row variable in this cells code here that will put the code in the last row. And what exactly am I putting, not the code, put the data in the last row. What exactly am I putting there? I'm putting whatever's in the text box. So here is the text box, txt underscore name. And if you don't remember that, scroll up here, look in your properties window, and if you select that, it says txt underscore name. So all you're doing is taking the value of txt underscore name here, txt underscore name dot value, and you're putting it in a cell. You don't even need to do this frm enter data, because it knows, I could remove this and it'll run the same. So if I do this again, Joe, and there's Joe. So you don't need to do the form enter data qualification. One more thing I want to show you is right now when I run this, I have to click this close button if I want to close the form. But let's put a button on the form that says close, so we could close the form instead of going up here and clicking on X. To do that is real easy. Let's put another button here. So here's another button. In the properties window, it's already selected. I'm going to change the caption to close. I'm going to change this to btn underscore close form. And I'll change the font to bold 12. Okay. And back color, I'll change it to red. And now look at what I have here. I have two buttons on the form. One to put the data on the worksheet, and this other one, which if I double click, now I have another sub procedure that is attached to this btn underscore close form button. And it's going to be what happens when it's clicked. And again, I didn't write this. I just double clicked on the button. And all I need to do to close the form is do unload and then frm underscore enter data. This unload closes the form. And down here in this code, I just want to put a comment. Find the last row to use. And again, this range last row is a named range. But let's see how that, just so you know, this is where that last row is coming from. It's a named range, and it refers to that. Okay. Now, if I click enter data, look what happens. I could immediately close the form by doing that. So now we're getting places. We can enter data. I could just put some dummy data in there. Click enter, and there it is. It appears on the worksheet. Or I could just close the form. That's all I wanted to do in this video. It's just an introduction to the forms, to the user form. And what we're going to do in the next few videos is really expand this form from what you see here with just a label and a text box into something that has all these controls on it. And I'll go over all these controls and tell you, what this does and how to populate it and how to grab the data from it and so on for each control here. And by the end of this, you'll be able to create a user form, use any of these controls, or use most of them. I'm not going to cover the tab strip in depth or the multi-page in depth because they're not used too much. I could always put up a video later, but the main things that are used are these top ones: the labels, the text box, combo box, list box, checkbox, radio button, toggle, frame, and the command button. And sometimes you'll use these other ones. We'll go over this ref edit and the picture and the spin button and the scroll bar. I might touch on, but 90% of these controls we're going to look at. So if you want to know how to make some cool GUIs, watch the next few videos on forms. All right, thanks.